Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck for you, but before that, just a quick reminder to please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and every single click counts. And today's deck is going to be centered around Vannifar Evolved Enigma. For 2 colorless, 1 green and 1 blue, she's the legendary creature Elf Ooze Wizard 3/4 with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Cloak a card from your hand, which means put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature with ward 2, turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card, or put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature you control. So I already did a spoiler spotlight about this card, and I said then that I thought it looked very interesting, and with that in mind I want us to try to build around a deck based on both of the abilities. So the deck is going to be largely focused on artifact creatures to satisfy the colorless clause, but at the same time we're going to have a lot of powerful creatures that we can cloak and then turn over at instant speed. We also have a few ways in the deck to blink creatures, which means we can also reuse enter the battlefield abilities of creatures that we've cloaked, which seems pretty nice. We also have some minor synergy with cards turning face up, so there's a lot of different things that the deck is trying to do, but we're still mostly going to be a kind of artifact colorless beatdown deck, which sounds very interesting to me, and I hope it does to you too. So without further ado, let's get started, and we're starting off with Arcbound Ravager. This is obviously going to be very nice in a deck with a lot of artifacts in it. Having modular provides some nice protection against removal, and this thing is an absolute pain in the combat phase because when people are low enough they kinda have to block it, but then if they do block it you don't necessarily need to use its ability. Arcbound Reclaimer is another very good Arcbound card. Since we're putting counters on it quite often with Vannifar, we can just keep putting cards that we want on top of our library so that we can reuse our best artifacts. Auton Soldier is a really powerful card. Coming in as a copy of Vannifar is incredibly strong because then we get to do her ability twice, but it's also just good copying all sorts of other ETB value creatures because then we get to use the Myriad ability. Canoptech Scarab Swarm is pretty powerful if we manage to hit somebody with a bunch of artifacts or lands in their graveyard. That's not always going to be the case, but just having some nice exile for the graveyard is useful on its own. Canoptech Spider, on the other hand, is very strong because we're going to be playing a lot of artifact creatures, which means we're going to be drawing a ton of cards. Coveted Falcon is a really interesting new card from the set. I think it's quite good because we can just donate a bunch of meaningless Thopter tokens or whatever to our opponents and then draw like 4 or 5 cards off of this, which is obviously very powerful, and then we can even get the stuff back given enough time, so I think it's a pretty solid addition. Crypto Thrall giving all other artifact creatures hexproof is really good. Crystalline Crawler works very nicely with what the deck is trying to do. It's going to come in with 2 counters on it, but then whenever Vannifar triggers to put a counter on each artifact creature, we get another counter on this, which is going to allow us to add a lot of mana. Cyberman Patrol is really good in an aggressive artifact deck, which this is. Cyberman Squadron is really powerful because we do have a lot of ETB abilities, so this is an absolute must kill for our opponents. Deadeye Navigator is one of those ways we can flip over our face down creatures in order to get their ETB abilities and cheat their mana costs. Deathmist Raptor is very good the longer the game goes on because it's just so hard to deal with for our opponents. It having Death Touch means that it can just sit back and stop people from attacking us if we needed to, or it can just swing in for 3 damage a turn or take out their best creature turn after turn because we can just bring it back whenever we flip over one of our face down creatures. Den Protector is an Eternal Witness that synergizes with our deck's theme. Ethereum Sculptor is going to give a discount to a large part of our deck, which is obviously very nice. Experiment 12 is a new addition which is very strong. Every time we turn over one of our face down creatures, we're going to get to put counters on it equal to its power. Angerback Walker just synergizes very well with our artifact aggro plan and the counters theme from Vannifar. Haywire Might is going to work really well by being an artifact creature that we can then trade in to permanently deal with an artifact or enchantment. Ixidor Reality Sculptor is going to buff all of our face down creatures, which is quite nice, but then it can also just turn anything face up at instant speed. Jetfire Ingenious Scientist is a complicated card, but it works very well with our artifact creature theme. Basically we can just keep flipping it back and forth and adding a bunch of mana. Kami of Whispered Hopes is going to work quite nicely with what the deck is trying to do by boosting our counters abilities and adding a bunch of mana. Kappa Cannoneer is a great way to finish off the game. It's very hard to deal with and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and being unblockable. Karn Legacy Reforged is a great one to play face down and then flip at the end of our opponent's turn because then we're going to get to add a ton of mana and attack with it immediately. Master of Ethereum will get very big in this deck and buffs all of our team. Mindless Automaton can draw us a bunch of cards because it should be getting a lot of counters on it thanks to our commander. Mere Battlesphere is one of the best ones to blink when it's face down because we get a bunch of artifact creatures which are going to grow very big with our commander. And Tuca Vigilante gives us a little bit of interaction, which is always useful. Phyrexian Metamorph can copy the best creature or artifact on the board. We can do some really crazy stuff like copying Lux Artillery. Phyrexian Triniform is a really powerful card, giving us a bunch of artifact tokens when it dies. Sprintlifter Ooze is really good in this deck since we're going wide. We can just flip over creatures turn after turn and make a bunch of really big oozes. The Surprise Death Touch can also be really good. Research Thief should draw us a lot of cards because we are running a lot of artifact creatures. Roaming Throne is here again as in most decks because it works so well with what our commander is doing. Sai Master Thopterist is going to be really good in this deck by making a bunch of Thopters that we can then sacrifice to draw cards. Scarecrow is really good as a way to reanimate artifact creatures from our graveyard. Sharding Sphinx again is going to provide us with a bunch of Thopters that we can then buff with our commander. Shimmer Dragon is going to be a large flyer with hexproof that can also draw us a lot of cards. Solemn provides ramp and card advantage on an artifact creature body. Steel Overseer works very well because we have so many cards that synergize with +1/+1 counters, and this being able to buff our entire team is great. Temur War Shaman works very nicely by manifesting the top card of our library and also giving us repeatable removal once we start flipping the cards that we've got face down. Thassa Deep Dwelling is great as a repeatable way to cheat on the mana of face down creatures and get their enter the battlefield abilities. Thought Monitor comes down for really cheap and draws us 2 cards. Grand Spider is really good in this deck. It gives us a Power Stone when it ETBs, which is good since we're running so many artifacts, and we can just give the other Power Stone to a player who can't really use it that much. Threefold Thunderhawk works really well both with the artifact creature theme and with the +1/+1 counter theme. This is really good. Triplicate Titan is a huge beater that's really good when we can cheat on its mana cost, but then it just also provides value when it dies. Unctus Grand Metatech is great because it buffs most of our team and gives us card selection as well. Whirler Rogue can be crucial in closing out the game by allowing us to give unblockable to some of our huge threats. And Wormcoil Engine is a classic powerful card that can gain us a bunch of life and is also very resilient to removal. Moving on to instants, we have Ghostly Flicker, which is really good to cheat on mana cost of face down creatures and get their enter the battlefield abilities. Reverse the Polarity is a good piece of interaction that can double up as a way to win us the game by giving everything unblockable. And Urza's Command is really good and flexible in this deck. It can either ramp us, create a huge beater, debuff our opponent's team, or allow us to draw a card in the scry. For artifacts, we have Animation Module. Since we're going to be putting counters on stuff quite a bit, this is very solid by giving us an extra body. Conjurer's Closet does another impression of Thassa Deep Dwelling, which we really need in this deck. Forsaken Monument is really good. It buffs all of our face down creatures and most of them when they're turned faced up since they're artifacts. It's also occasionally going to let some of our lands tap for extra mana, and it's going to gain us a lot of life. Lux Artillery is one of my favorite cards in the deck, and it's an excellent finisher. It's going to basically mean that most of our artifacts come in with extra counters on them, and then if we have 30 or more counters amongst artifacts and creatures we control, which is definitely doable in this deck, then this is going to start dealing 10 damage to each opponent at our end step. Mirrodin Besieged is really powerful in this deck. We're almost always going to choose the Mirren mode early game, but late game Phyrexian might actually be useful as well. Thopter Spy Network is very powerful. It's going to draw us a lot of cards, and it's going to make a steady stream of attackers for us. And Trail of Mystery is very powerful because it's going to make sure that we keep hitting our land drops every time we flip over one of our face down creatures. Finally, moving on to lands, we have Foundry of the Consuls, which we can trade in for a couple of Thopters. Runes of Orin Reef is going to allow us to put a counter on a colorless creature. Sanctum of Ugin can be pretty powerful in this deck. We have 4 or 5 creatures that cost 7 or greater, so when we cast them, we can just sack this to search for the best artifact creature in our deck and put it into our hand. Shrine of Forsaken Gods can be pretty good. Early game is just a colorless land, but late game it can actually tap for quite a bit of mana. And Tomb of the Spirit Dragon is just a low opportunity cost way to gain a bit of extra life. So there you have it. This has been our Vannifar Evolved Enigma deck tech. I'm pretty proud of this one because I think it's pretty unique and out of the box. What do you think though? Are there any cards you would have added? Any things you think I shouldn't have included? Let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.